Hey guys, it's General Grievous Hero, the Factual Clone Wars, and today on this video we're going to be talking about why the 2003 Clone Wars series fits better with the prequels than the 2008 The Clone Wars series. I know people are going to be like, wait, General Grievous Hero, the Clone Wars saying 2003 is better than the Clone Wars? But as I stated previously in the true problem with the Clone Wars video, which you can go check that out, link in the card right now, but as I already said, I like the Clone Wars, but I hate it at the same time. Love Grievous's heroic character in the Clone Wars, as that's what this channel is about, but hate how stuff is, such as the biased portrayals and false narrative, and stuff not making sense with the prequels. So, we're going to look at the 2003 Clone Wars and why it fits with the movies better, as this is what George Lucas intended before he switched things like Grievous. And then sadly, Dave Filoni changed a lot of stuff, which basically ruined the show and messed up the prequels. Star Wars Clone Wars is an animated television series that chronicles the Clone Wars between the Galactic Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Produced by Cartoon Network Studios, the series originally aired from 2003 to 2005 and was intended to serve as a bridge between the films Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones and Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. The show set the groundwork for characters as it followed closely with the movies. First, we're going to look at the Galactic Republic / Jedi Order, the villains in the 2003 Clone Wars. The evil Republic in the 2003 is pretty much accurate to how they are in the movies. The Jedi in the 2003 Clone Wars, while evil, are less evil than the 2008 The Clone Wars Jedi. Anakin Skywalker in the 2003 Clone Wars acts like Attack of the Clones in the first half, where he is a whiny, annoying villain that disobeys the evil Obi-Wan Kenobi's orders, which is how he's supposed to act. He later becomes mature, and in the second half of the series, leading up to Revenge of the Sith, as it shows the growth of Anakin. Obi-Wan just acts like the evil Obi-Wan in the prequels, but is less evil than his The Clone Wars counterpart, as he isn't doing evil grins and sinister tricks like the Clone Wars version. The rest of the Jedi villains, such as Yoda, Mace Windu, Luminara, Barriss, and Ki-Adi-Mundi, are just there as villains because they're shorter episodes, but it got the characters to the point like Revenge of the Sith. The clones, however, are the best part of the 2003 Clone Wars, as they act exactly like how they're supposed to act in Star Wars. The issue with the 2008 The Clone Wars clones is that they try to humanize their villainy. George Lucas clearly stated in Attack of the Clones that the clones are obedient and follow orders without question. Listen to it right here.
They are totally obedient, taking any order without question. We modified their genetic structure to make them less independent than the original host.
And who was the original host?
A bounty hunter called Jango Fett. They are totally obedient, taking any order without question. We modified their genetic structure to make them less independent than the original host.
You can't be serious!
Okay, so you heard that. They take orders without question. However, Dave Filoni has clone troopers in the Clone Wars 2008 questioning their sinister Jedi's orders, which is out of character. George Lucas clearly stated that only clone commandos, clone commanders, clone captains, and ARC troopers have some individuality as their higher ranked clones, that they can disagree with Order 66, but more on that later. The 2003 clones just follow the villainous Jedi generals and barely talk, which is how they were in the movies. This is how the clones are supposed to be, as Captain Fordo was the best clone in the series, and it showed this. Now on to the Separatists, aka the CIS, the heroes in the 2003 Clone Wars, or meh. The Separatists in the Clone Wars 2003 are mid-heroic antagonists, but it fits with the movies as in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. The CIS are just there, but they are the heroes, but they don't do much. The 2003 CIS goes back to the possible original intention of the Separatists, as it seemed like George Lucas wanted the CIS to be, in quotation, villains before changing them to be heroes as seen in the Clone Wars 2008. The reason why is that there are more evil people in the 2003 CIS, such as Legends, Grievous, Asajj Ventress, Dur, Shan-Hill, Dooku, and etc., and not much heroic people in the series, whereas the Clone Wars 2008 has way more heroic Separatist characters, such as Grievous, Trench, Osi, Sobek, Worm, Losum, Mina Bonteri, and etc. Besides the 2003 Grievous fights, the CIS are mid in the 2003 Clone Wars. B-1 battle droids act like the movies with their deep robotic voices, and they don't say much. Ventress as a villain with the heroic CIS was cool, but she didn't really use the Separatist forces at all, and just fought Anakin on Yavin 4 and so-called died. Durs was a cool villain, but was killed off quickly, in quotations, because he really didn't die. If you read the Legends comics, he comes back, so again, he wasn't even dead, as you see. Dooku did nothing. Oreo Danse was funny, but it was unknown if he's heroic or not. In the 2003 Grievous, while he had cool fights, is just a robot with no depth in character, unlike the heroic Clone Wars Grievous from the 2008 series. Again, I don't care how cool 2003 Grievous' fights are. He barely talks and is nothing but a monster that people think the heroic the Clone Wars Grievous is when he's not. However, the 2003 CIS fit way more with the movies despite being lackluster. When Star Wars The Clone Wars came out in 2008, the series was initially a continuation of Star Wars Clone Wars 2003. However, due to the many changes in this new universe of the Clone Wars versus the Star Wars Legends timeline due to biased director Dave Filoni, Star Wars The Clone Wars was a new series overall. Now, as you already know, the Clone Wars, Jedi, and Galactic Republic are villains and far more worse than the 2003 Clone Wars. The Clone Wars Jedi commit way more heinous acts than the 2003 Jedi, as they kill innocents, abduct children, start wars, train terrorists, only stop enslavement when crazy people part of the heroic Separatists are involved, and etc. While the 2003 Jedi are connected with the Legends Jedi, who did also several heinous acts, it is way worse than the Clone Wars. Anakin and Obi-Wan are way more villainous than their 2003 Clone Wars counterparts, as Anakin is now suddenly mature during the Clone Wars movie and gets a Padawan named Ahsoka Tano. Now, mind you, the Clone Wars film takes place months after the Attack of the Clones Battle of Geonosis, and now Anakin is a mature villain and isn't whiny, which, while is better, isn't accurate to canon. Yes, George Lucas has had way more involvement in the Clone Wars movie, as you can tell by the Clone Troopers, which we'll talk about in a minute. But again, this goes away from the 2003 Clone Wars. Throughout the series, Anakin commits more heinous acts such as force-choking heroic Paco the Lesser, Rako Hardeen, Obi-Wan in disguise, Darth Sanar, who was a villain but is still evil versus evil, false surrendering, and many more evil acts. Obi-Wan too is much worse, as he kills innocents, abducts children, says the most evil things like Megatron from Transformers G1.
As I said, if we can't have the crystal, no one can.
If we can't have it, nobody can!
Calls out Anakin for killing, but then tries to murder the hero Grievous himself, and etc. The Jedi commit heinous acts in the Clone Wars, like Kit Fisto, who only did one evil action in the 2003 Clone Wars by fighting the Khorne Isolation League, but in the Clone Wars, he breaks into the heroic General Grievous' home and tries to murder him on a search for Newt Gunray, and murders Grievous' pet, which causes Grievous to hate the Jedi even more for their villainy when they already killed his people. There are so much more evilness to the Clone Wars Jedi that I can go on and on and on, such as Mace Windu, Ayla, Secure Ki-Adi-Mundi, psychopathic behavior, and much more. But I'm not, as you can already check out why the Jedi are villains in the Clone Wars in this explained video, link in the card right now. But the point is, the Jedi became worse villains, yet Dave Filoni tried to make them look, in quotation, heroic, when they're clearly villainous protagonists. The Galactic Republic was also messed up in the Clone Wars, despite getting new cool things such as the TLB-Y Starfighters, AV-7 heavy cannons, RX-200s, and etc. The Clone Wars Republic messed up the Venator-class Star Destroyer's appearance. See, in the 2003 Clone Wars, only the Alchemator-class assault cruiser or assault ship was used in the beginning of the war. In the second volume of the 2003 Clone Wars, Venators were introduced as the new Star Destroyers right before Revenge of the Sith. However, in the Clone Wars, Venators are there during the beginning of the war alongside Alchemators, as the Alchemator soon becomes irrelevant to the Venator throughout the whole series. While I do like Venators, they could have just kept the Alchemators as the main ships throughout seasons 1 through 3 and then introduced the Venators later. The clone troopers were drastically changed and kind of ruined. Remember how the 2003 did the clones like Attack of the Clones? Well, Filoni ruins that. As stated previously, George Lucas was involved in the Clone Wars film in the early parts of the series, so in the Clone Wars film, the clones were pretty much the same villains as they rarely spoke, and only the commanders and captains, Rex and Cody, spoke to their evil Jedi generals. However, once in the Clone Wars show, clones started having these villain personalities like Fire, Rise, and Jack, trying to make them more than the slaves they are. Fire is a clone lieutenant, later commander, so he can have a personality, but Rise and Jack are just normal clones who shouldn't be questioning the Jedi's evil orders. As stated in the Attack of the Clones, clones are loyal and follow orders direct without question. Regular clones in the show started to have personalities, emotions, and relationships with the Jedi villains to, in quotation, humanize them, which led to people thinking that they were, in quotation, heroes when they're still villains. This went against George Lucas's wishes, as the clones were not supposed to be humanized villains, as stated in Attack of the Clones. Later in Season 6 of the Clone Wars, an inhibitor ship was added by the biased Dave Filoni, as it added an excuse to have the clones be programmed, in quotations, to kill their malicious Jedi generals rather than already knowing it, to further make them sympathetic, much to George Lucas's annoyance, as Lucas had previously stated that only clone commanders or commandos had the right to refuse Order 66 since they had their own choices. This destroyed the Star Wars movies, as now it makes the clones who were actually waiting to kill the evil Jedi generals, because most clones hated how the Jedi were treated as slaves to the Jedi, look nothing like being programmed. The movie clearly shows that clones have no emotion killing the evil Jedi, but in the Clone Wars and even the Bad Batch make it worse, where they're all, in quotation, sad or hurt. They have to do this. It goes against the movies, and it's a stupid way for Filoni to separate the clones from the stormtroopers, but clones are literally stormtroopers. They were never heroes at all. So this is why the 2003 Clone Wars is better, as it never tried to change the movies because of a biased director's favorite side. The clones and Jedi were never supposed to have special bonds because the Jedi villains never cared for the clones and just used them only. People hated Pon Krell for the way he treated the clones in the Umbar arc, but the clones are evil and not heroic. The Jedi don't care about their clones because if they did, they would have stopped the way Krell was treating them from the jump, and even the evil Even Peel and Kenobi wouldn't let a clone die for the evil Republic information at the hands of the heroic O.C. Sobek. As Grievous Hero said in Shadow of the Malevolence,
Jedi are never that harsh with their clones. The care these Jedi show for their troops is a weakness.
it is a weakness because the Jedi so-called heroes don't care about their troops. The Clone Wars and Bad Batch try to make the clone troopers, who are literally stormtroopers, sympathetic villains, which is just pathetic. Anyway, on to the Separatists, aka CIS, the heroes in the Clone Wars 2008. The CIS are one of the better things in the Clone Wars in 2003, as General Grievous is now a hero in a new version of Grievous instead of the evil Legends Grievous from the 2003. The CIS are actually great heroes in the Clone Wars because they have more heroic people inside the faction, as stated above with Trench, Osi, Sobek, Warren Lothston, Bina Bonetary, and etc. But sadly, Dave Filoni in his bias tries to make those heroes look like villains in quotations when they're not even evil. However, you do have evil people part of the CIS like the 2003 Clone Wars, but it's less, such as Newt Gunray, Locke Dur, Nuvo Vindi, Wat Tambor, Asajj Ventress, and Dooku. Ventress is more involved with the heroic CIS this time around, whereas the 2003 Clone Wars, she didn't lead any CIS forces, but in the Clone Wars 2008's first episode, Ventress is leading a droid army on Rigosa against the evil Jedi Master Yoda. Ventress and Dooku are fake heroes to the CIS, as they don't care about the freedom or independence in the galaxy, but only the Sith's goals. Grievous, on the other hand, cares about the heroic Separatist cause and kills the Jedi for slaughtering his innocent Kaleesh people. General Grievous' heroic character is also better than the 2003 Clone Wars Grievous because he actually has personality, and not as just some mindless monster machine that barely speaks and has no personality. Fools will debate that the 2003 Grievous is, in quotation, better. He could kill multiple Jedi quickly, and the Clone Wars Grievous can't. Because... because he's weak. But the Clone Wars Grievous is a ruthless hero that can kill multiple Jedi villains, but the plot armor in the Clone Wars makes him look weak, especially in the first season when he's actually a strong hero. Also, the Clone Wars Grievous hero is fighting the Jedi villains that have to survive till Revenge of the Sith, so he can't kill them at all. But I already talked about that in the General Grievous wasn't ruined but hindered by plot armor video, which you can go check that out, link in the card right now. But all of that weak talk is pathetic because it's not Grievous who's, in quotation, weak, it's the plot armor that's making the hero lose. So the Clone Wars Grievous will always be better than the 2003 Grievous. Plus, the Clone Wars Grievous is a hero, he's not a villain despite what false information pushes, and that's just a fact, but you already know that. Also, the CIS get new stuff like BX series droid commandos, Hyena class bombers, B2HA super battle droids, and etc. Whereas the 2003 Clone Wars didn't really introduce new droids, but the Clone Wars 2008, however, lacked Hailfire droids and OG9s. B1 series battle droids are comedic heroes, though annoying at times more than their 2003 variants, who had funny moments but didn't speak much. Overall, Clone Wars 2008 CIs are better than Clone Wars 2003, but again, it doesn't fit much with the movies, because in the Clone Wars, Grievous Hero fights Obi-Wan villain numerous times, but in Revenge of the Sith, Grievous is acting like he's meeting Kenobi for the first time, because he actually is. If the Clone Wars were supposed to be Revenge of the Sith, they should have never added Grievous' rivalry with the sinister Kenobi, because it doesn't make sense, but you can check that out in the Clone Wars Grievous Hero and Revenge of the Sith Grievous were never supposed to be the same video, link in the card right now. Also, Count Dooku fighting Obi-Wan and Anakin multiple times in the Clone Wars messes up Revenge of the Sith, as Anakin is referring to Geonosis when he talks to Dooku, saying that his powers have doubled since the last time they met and not the Clone Wars Season 6. But yeah, stuff like that messes up the Clone Wars series, but then I remember that the Clone Wars was never supposed to be connected with the films. George Lucas stated that the Clone Wars was T-Canon, aka television canon, as while it is canon, it wasn't really with the movies, canon to the movies, and this is how Dave Filoni was able to change and get away with so much stuff. The Clone Wars was basically its own universe, and that's why the stuff like the Clone Wars Grievous that George Lucas made into a hero was never supposed to be Revenge of the Sith Grievous, the villain connected with the 2003 Clone Wars Legends Grievous. This is why you also don't see Commando droids, Hyena bombers, BTLB Y-Wings, or Z95 headhunters in Revenge of the Sith, because they weren't supposed to be there. However, once Lucas sold off Lucasfilm to Disney in 2013, the Clone Wars became canon and Legends, and as of 2020, Season 7 of the Clone Wars was finished, connecting Revenge of the Sith to the Clone Wars in a different way. So basically, the facts are the 2003 Clone Wars fits with the movies better, as the Clone Wars deviates and changes a lot. So when you watch Attack of the Clones, the Clone Wars, and then Revenge of the Sith, it doesn't make sense. Again, I'm always going to prefer the Clone Wars Grievous Hero over anything, but it's not about Grievous's hero character. It's about the Clone Wars itself, and the story doesn't make sense with Revenge of the Sith. These die-hard, the Clone Wars in quotation, fans be crying when the facts hit them in their face because they want to follow a biased narrative and say stupid things like Jedi, who are villains, are in quotation flawed, but the Separatists are still the in quotation bad guys BS. Again, how are the Separatists in quotation evil for killing the evil? And as I said in my other video, the Jedi's evil actions aren't flaws if they were doing it all the time, which is what they do. It's not like they kill innocents once, they did it multiple times, which makes you villains. So when Grievous is killing the Jedi for their heinous acts, he's somehow still in quotation villain when he only did heroic actions and killed 0 innocents? Make it make sense and stop being stupid. Grievous is a hero, and it's the fact in the Jedi are villains. It's the fact in the Clone Wars canon. 2003 Clone Wars is evil Jedi versus evil Legends Grievous because Legends Grievous killed innocents. So you can't even use that excuse with the Clone Wars Grievous, who's a hero, and it's an effing fact in the show. So please stop that mess. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, share if you're new, and check out those shorts. You already know General Grievous's famous heroic quote, "I've been looking forward to meeting you. And remember, I'm always a hero in the Clone Wars 2008. Don't compare me to no Legends 2003. Have a good day, y'all. Always remember that Grievous is here. It's a fact and not an opinion. Keep it factual and keep it real, y'all. I'm out.